Gu Xian, the young Marquis Gu, and I are a model couple praised by everyone. The young Marquis Gu likes to keep mistresses outside, while I, the Marchioness, am keen on taking in concubines for him. Gu Xian kept 4 gorgeous mistresses outside, so I brought 4 equally gorgeous concubines into the manor for him. But this harmonious life only lasted 10 years. One day 10 years later, Linji, the seductive mistress Gu Xian had hidden outside, came flaunting in front of me with their illegitimate son and nearly blinded my son. To settle this matter, Gu Xian offered me 100,000 taels of silver. Children don't know any better or understand consequences. You've always known when to advance and retreat, so you surely won't fuss over such a small matter. For the sake of his illegitimate son, he used 100,000 taels of silver to buy my son's eyes. I said nothing and readily accepted the silver. After 10 years of marriage, Gu Xian doesn't know that I am the type to never let any grudge slide. The only reason I've tolerated him is because the time wasn't right. Now I can't take it anymore. So, Gu Xian and his mistress's entire family are all going to die together. Linji is the 5th mistress Gu Xian kept outside, and the 5th mistress to come flaunting in front of me. The previous 4 mistresses only wanted to become Gu Xian's concubines, flaunting themselves before me just for a proper status. I was generous and accommodated them all. Every single one of these mistresses was carried into the Marquis manor in a small sedan chair and became Gu Xian's concubines. Linji was different from the previous 4 mistresses. She wasn't content being a concubine. Linji's goal was to become the Marchioness. Gu Xian gave Linji hope. I knew Linji bore Gu Xian a son. I knew Gu Xian sent silver like flowing water to the estate where Linji and her son lived. I knew Linji's life was no worse than mine as the Marchioness. My maternal family had fallen, while the Gu family was thriving and had regained His Majesty's favor. Without my maternal family's support, in everyone's eyes, the only thing I could do as the Marchioness was endure. Endure until my Xiaoer grew up and could stand on his own. All these years I did exactly what people guessed, turned a blind eye and endured in silence. People outside were all saying I was a patient turtle, praising my exceptional ability to endure. Everyone thought that behind my endurance, sweetness would come after bitterness. After hearing such rumors so often, Linji couldn't wait any longer. Her son with Gu Xian was 1 year younger than my Xiaoer. They said he was brilliant, praised by a renowned scholar of the court as having limitless potential. Years of luxurious living made Linji's ambition and desires grow like wild weeds. Linji didn't want to hide outside as a mistress, didn't want her son to be just a mistress's child. She wanted to be the Marchioness. That way, her son could become a legitimate heir, openly enjoying endless glory, wealth, and favor, able to soar to the top and become someone above others. So Linji ordered her illegitimate son to poison my son. Me son is in critical condition, his agonizing screams coming from inside the room, standing in the corridor. My fingernails have torn into my palms, inside my sleeves, blood dripping everywhere. If I could, I would rather be the one suffering instead of my innocent child. It was at this moment that Linji brazenly passed through the layers of guards in the Marquis's mansion and appeared before me. She was wearing a red silk skirt that only the legitimate wife could wear, standing before me with a coquettish smile. She claimed to be apologizing on behalf of her child, but there wasn't a trace of remorse in her expression or tone. Children don't know better and make mistakes. I, as his mother, have come to apologize on his behalf. I hope Madam can forgive him. As she spoke, she raised her fair wrist to show me the touch of emerald green on it. This was the Gu family's heirloom jade bracelet, passed down through generations only to daughters-in-law. Originally, when I gave birth to Xiaoer, this pair of jade bracelets should have been passed from my mother-in-law, old Madame Gu, to me. But my maiden family was convicted and exiled that year, and my mother-in-law never mentioned the bracelets to me again. I had always thought only Gu Xian doted on his mistress Linji, but I never expected that my mother-in-law, old Madame Gu, was also involved. Speaking of which, when I first married into the Gu family, my maiden family was at the height of its power, while the Gu family was ostracized at court because old Marquis Gu had offended His Majesty and fallen out of favor. Old Marquis Gu died in despair from his frustrated ambitions, and the Gu family's situation became difficult. By all rights, I should have avoided the declining Gu family and chosen a better husband. But I didn't do that. I thought hearts are made of flesh if I treat others well. They would surely treat me even better in return. On my wedding night when I married Gu Xian, he was so moved that he held my hand and promised to never let me down in this lifetime. Because of his promise, I foolishly used my 128 pieces of dowry and my maiden family's influence to scheme and run about for the Gu family. In just 3 years, the Gu Shi family regained the emperor's favor, while my maiden family was exiled on trumped-up charges. And after my maiden family was convicted and exiled, Gu Xian started keeping mistresses outside. From the day Gu Xian kept his first mistress, I knew that things between us were completely over. Gu Xian forgot the promise he once made to me, and I no longer expected his pity. My only wish was to raise my Xiao'er well, to let him grow up safely and make something of himself. But Gu Xian wouldn't even give me that chance. 10 years of marriage. I gave him all the dignity he could ask for, yet he refused to let me have any dignity. When my Xiao'er was poisoned in his tea by Linji's son and lost his sight, I thought it was just Linji's delusional wishful thinking. Holding on to a sliver of hope, I sent the manor servants to fetch Gu Xian, asking him to find a famous doctor to treat my Xiao'er and save my son's eyes. By this time, Gu Xian was already above all others. Finding a famous doctor was something he could accomplish with just a few words. I didn't expect Gu Xian to reject my request. When my Xiao'er was suffering immensely, he used being on duty as an excuse and stayed at the Imperial study for 3 days without coming home. I had no choice but to pull strings and run around everywhere to find a good doctor for my Xiao'er. Me son was lucky. The divine physician Shen Yi happened to be passing through the capital. I knelt before Shen Yi's horse and kowtowed until my forehead bled, finally getting Shen Yi to agree to use acupuncture to draw out the poison for my son. Because the treatment was delayed at the critical moment, the poison had already entered his heart meridians. It took Shen Yi 3 days to draw out the poison from my Xiao'er. For these 3 days I stayed awake without rest, keeping vigil outside the room. Listening to my Xiao'er howling and screaming in pain tore my heart apart. I didn't expect Lin Jihui to brazenly prance in front of me at this time. She looked at me with a charming smile. "Madame Gu, I came today to apologize on behalf of my son to the young master. Speaking of which, my son was just playing a prank. He only put a fingernail's amount into the young master's teacup. Who knew the young master's body would be so weak that he couldn't withstand this bit of poison? The young master is the heir of the Marquis's household, yet he can't even handle this little thing. I am afraid he'll have trouble growing up. My son already knows he was wrong, so I, his mother, came personally to apologize for him. My husband also spoke before I came. Madame Gu's situation is different from before your maiden family met with disaster, and is in Ninguda lacking food and clothing, just when silver is needed most. My husband said he is willing to pay 100,000 taels of silver to buy Madame Marquis and the young master's forgiveness." Linji looked at me with a provocative gaze, listing off how her husband showered her with affection, tenderness, and spent money like water. She spoke in great detail, stopping just short of boasting about their bedroom pleasures. Ever since my maiden family fell from grace, my marriage with Gu Xian existed in name only. He never spoke softly to me again, never showed me any care or consideration. I watched expressionlessly as the woman before me spoke at length, my ears not missing any sound from inside the room, until the inner door opened from inside, and divine physician Shen walked out wearily, nodding at me. Only then did my anxious heart finally settle back down. Linji in front of me saw divine physician Shen, a flash of hatred in her eyes, watching Shen Yi leave with a forced smile. Madam is quite skilled, actually inviting divine physician Shen to treat the young master. It seems the young master must be fine now, so my son doesn't need to bear any responsibility. Right, I glanced sideways at Linji. She raised her sleeve to cover her cherry lips and gracefully approached me. "Madam, do you know why your maiden family was suddenly convicted and exiled 7 years ago?" I watched her quietly. Linji smiled seductively, because an informant presented evidence of the Shu family's disloyalty to His Majesty. His Majesty was furious and exiled the Shu family. Madam is so clever, you should know who I am referring to as the informant, right? For the past 7 years, I've been searching for the truth behind my maiden family's conviction and exile. After 7 years, I finally found some leads. When I found out it was Xian, I couldn't believe it at all. I kept thinking something must be wrong. Back then, I married down to him without a second thought, helped him make a comeback and revive the Marquis manor. Even if I had no credit, I at least put in the hard work. How could he be so ungrateful and heartless, stabbing my family in the back? Linji really knows how to twist the knife. She knows exactly how devastating it is for me to hear this news from her own mouth. For the past 7 years, Madam's family has been suffering in Ninguda, exposed to the elements with nowhere to rest. It is all because of your choice back then that your maiden family was completely destroyed. Madam, you are the very culprit behind your family's conviction. Don't you feel any guilt or sorrow? Knowing that Xian schemed against my family behind my back, how could I not regret? How could I not hate? I wish I could eat his flesh and gnaw on his bones. Linji's gaze fell on my face, trying to read my current emotions. Seeing me standing there woodenly without any expression, showing no signs of heartbreak, no wailing or questioning in grief. She wasn't too satisfied with my reaction and let out a cold laugh. Speaking of which, you've been sitting in the position of the Marquis's wife for 10 years now. It is time to step down. Leaving on your own would at least be dignified and spare your life. Otherwise, you won't even know when you'll die. In this Grand Marquis manor, not many people want to see you alive. As she finished speaking, she let out a bell-like laugh. I won't disturb Madam any longer. I'll take my leave and go home to prepare hangover soup for my husband. Speaking of which, my husband is currently at the Left Prime Minister's residence drinking wine and admiring plum blossoms with the Left Prime Minister. He has been there for 3 days and 3 nights and promised to return home today. After my shower was poisoned, I had arranged for someone to urgently report to Xian. Xian refused to come back, citing being on duty. I never believed it. I didn't expect Linji to tell me the truth. He wasn't on duty at all, but was currying favor with the Left Prime Minister. And the Left Prime Minister was one of the main culprits who caused my maiden family to be exiled back then. Xian colluded with the Left Prime Minister to bring down my maiden family through framing and false accusations. He is my greatest enemy, one of the enemies I've been searching for all along. How laughable that I never suspected him all these years. No wonder Xian was indifferent when my shower was poisoned. He harmed my maiden family to this extent, with a blood feud between us. How could he possibly show even a shred of affection for my shower? Even Xian's mother made no appearance after hearing my shower was poisoned. She only sent a completely insignificant senior maid from her side to take a look, and that was considered her duty done. Linji was right. The entire Ju family is waiting for me and my shower to die. Either way it is death, so I'll drag them all down to hell with me. I raised my hand to stop Linji, who was smiling radiantly and about to leave. Since you are already here, have a cup of tea before you go. Linji naturally didn't want to stay for tea, but the current situation didn't allow her to refuse. When I spoke up to keep her for tea, my 2 senior maids, Fei and Hong Tao, had already flanked and restrained Linji from both sides. Linji was stunned by this sudden turn of events, her arrogant face now showing a panicked expression. Lowly slaves, how dare you be rude to me? Her answer came in the form of several heavy slaps. Fei showed no mercy, and Linji spat out a mouthful of blood, with 2 pearly white teeth in the bloody foam. She opened her mouth to call for help, but it was already too late. Fei was quick to dislocate her jaw. The pain of a dislocated jaw was not easy to bear. Linji's beautiful face had already swollen up like a pig's head. There was no longer a trace of arrogance in her eyes, only filled with terror. Ri let out an ayah as I satisfactorily looked at Linji's current state. I asked you to invite someone for tea. Why couldn't you be gentler? After all, very few people get to drink tea I personally brew. I said this, While leisurely turning and stepping into the side room, Linji was dragged in by Tao Hong like a dead dog being hauled along. The door of the side room closed with a creak. I sat in the main seat, watching as Tao Hong kicked the bruised and bloody-mouthed Linji to kneel before me. A small red clay stove beside me was brewing tea, the fragrance wafting all around. Linji could only kneel on the ground, unable to speak, making incomprehensible sounds while glaring at me with hatred. If looks could kill, I would have died countless times already. I didn't mind at all, lightly raising my hand, and Elfei Liu immediately stepped forward to pour me a cup of tea. The tea's fragrance filled the air. I picked up the cup and took a gentle sip, smiling at Linji, who was being held down and forced to kneel before me. "Why aren't you serving tea to our guest?" Upon receiving the order, Elfei Liu picked up the boiling teapot and walked over to Linji's side. Under her terrified gaze, she pried open Linji's mouth and smilingly served her the tea. Linji's mouth was wide open, white steam continuously rising from it, her face twisted like a demon from hell. I watched her with a smile. "Is this tea good? If you like it, drink more, there is plenty." The tea was certainly not very pleasant to drink. Otherwise, Linji wouldn't be shaking her head desperately with tears and snot streaming down her face. How pitiful, her whole mouth is ruined. I don't know who gave her the courage, not only touching my jower, but also daring to come alone to my face and make a scene. Linji surely didn't know who Shu Ran used to be before marrying Gu Xian. I spent a full 10 years in the military camp. I trained in the military camp since I was 8. At 15, I rode alone into enemy camps to behead their generals, and at 16, I formed my own cavalry and achieved numerous military merits. In the Northwest, people called me Shu Ran, the living king of hell, feared even by ghosts, the souls who've died under my blade number in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. The reason I retired from the military, took off my armor, and put on women's clothing is because the Shu family achieved too many great merits and outshone the ruler. To avoid unnecessary trouble, I had no choice but to resort to this. Since ancient times, there is only one fate for those who outshine their ruler. The Shu family being exiled to Ningguda was something I'd long anticipated. I just never expected that Gu Xian would be involved in framing us. It is not like I've never heard the story of the farmer and the snake. I just never thought it would happen to me. My greatest virtue is holding grudges. Since Gu Xian wronged me first, I won't hold back. From now on, I am afraid no one in the Gu family will be left alive. But I don't want to rush this hunting game. To kill a person, you must first break their spirit. I need to let Gu Xian and her son experience the taste of being slowly cut with a dull knife. I looked at Linji with her mouth agape, covered in dense blisters, and chuckled softly, "Now that you've drunk my tea. Let's have a chat. Where should we start?" "Let's start with your son. Do you know where your son is right now?" Linji shook her head. Her throat and tongue had already been scalded raw, making her unable to speak, but her mind was still clear. When I suddenly asked about her son, she knew to be afraid. As the saying goes, a mother and child are connected at heart, and a mother will fiercely protect her young. When she bullied and humiliated me, she never imagined she would end up like this. If I can lay hands on her, I can naturally do the same to her son. Linji didn't want everything she had experienced to happen again to her son. She knelt on the ground and kowtowed on her own initiative. How pitiful blood spurted from her forehead. When she was cruelly harming my jower, why didn't she spend even a moment thinking about the word retribution? I sighed. Because you didn't return for so long. Your son got anxious at home and came to the Marquis Manor to find you. Such a small child. They say he is brilliant and has the talent to become the top scholar. What a pity. Linji stared at me with wide eyes filled with shock and fear. I paused for a moment before continuing. He went to find the old madam. He is quite clever too, knowing to seek help from the old madam. Hearing that her son went to seek help from the old madam, Linji showed a relieved expression. Then I sighed again. He is still too young. Seeking help from the old madam was a smart move, but he shouldn't have cursed at people in his panic. I paused again, then slowly said, You've been with Gu Xian for 8 or 10 years now. You should know what Gu Xian's mother likes, right? Speaking of which, my mother-in-law loves it most when people praise her for looking young and beautiful, loves hearing people flatter her with wishes for a long life. But your son committed a grave taboo. He actually cursed her as ugly and hideous. Cursed her, saying she wouldn't live past March next year. Linji's eyes went round as saucers. She couldn't believe her brilliant son would be so foolish. Her son took after her, knowing when to advance or retreat and what matters. There is no way he would do something like this to the old madam of the Gu family. Besides, Gu Xian's mother had met her, and Gu Xian's illegitimate son. Even if her son really did something foolish, Gu Xian's mother would let him off. But nothing is absolute. I chuckled lightly. You don't believe it, do you? Don't worry. I'll personally take you to see your precious son later. Before that, let's wait for Gu Xian first. I've already sent someone to pass a message to him. Hearing this, Linji's eyes immediately lit up. I chuckled. Hearing that you entered the Marquise's manor and haven't left for 4 hours. Gu Xian got anxious. He stopped drinking and admiring plum blossoms, rushing back on horseback to see what is going on. By my calculations, Gu Xian should have already returned to the manor by now. As expected, he should be coming to my courtyard any moment. You two were in love, after all. I'll give you and Gu Xian a chance to save each other. Just as I finished speaking, hurried footsteps came from outside, followed by Gu Xian's imposing voice. Shu Ran! Shu Ran! Get out here! I stood up leisurely. Marquis, looking for me. The door was kicked open heavily, and Gu Xian stepped in, bringing the cold air with him. His face carried a harsh and cold expression, matching the gloomy weather outside. I have to say, Linji was indeed Gu Xian's sweetheart. His concern for Linji's safety made Gu Xian tear off his disguise. He barged in and started interrogating me. What did you do to Linji? My Giaour was struggling and wailing in pain, yet Gu Xian remained unmoved. But the news of Linji's disappearance made him so anxious it is obvious which one matters more to him. I smiled faintly. Does the Marquis want to know? Then let me tell you in detail. That Linji let her son commit violence and harm my Giaour, and she even dared to come to my door to provoke me, the Marquis's wife, who gave a mere commoner like her the guts to mess with me. So naturally, I didn't treat her kindly. What did you do to her? Shu Ran, are you tired of living? Is the Marquis sure you want to speak to me in that tone? I turned cold. The innate killing intent made Gu Xian retreat 3 steps. He knew he'd been rude and softened his tone. Right under the Emperor's nose. You, as the Marquis's wife, actually used private punishment on a weak woman. Can you bear the consequences if word gets out? If the Marquise doesn't tell, and I don't tell, who would know? She is just a lowly servant. What does it matter if she dies? Seeing that I was different from usual, Gu Xian's expression turned extremely ugly. A mistress coming to the door to provoke the legal wife, no matter where this is reported. Ava Corporation's mother and son would be in the wrong. Gu Xian knew this well. To save his beloved woman, he temporarily didn't dare to openly break with me. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he took out a banknote from his pocket. I already know about this matter. How about this? I'll give you 100,000 in banknotes, and we let this matter go. Is that acceptable? The Marquis is quite generous. For an outside mistress, Linji, Gu Xian readily handed out 100,000 taels of silver. Such a lavish gesture is truly jaw-dropping. I chuckled lightly. In the Marquis's eyes, can you only see money? Don't you want to know how our Giaour is doing now? A flicker of guilt crossed Gu Xian's face when he heard the name Giaour. I already know about Giaour's situation. It is pitiful that he has gone blind, but I'll make proper arrangements for him in the future. So he ignored and neglected because he was certain my Giaour was beyond saving and could only become a blind person. They say even a tiger won't eat its cubs, but Gu Xian's heart is rotten to the core, more vicious than a tiger. My killing intent overflowed uncontrollably. Gu Xian seemed to sense it, shuddered, and then continued. What is done is done. It is heaven's will and cannot be defied. I know you are upset, and I don't feel good about it either. But let me be clear, since Giaour has become blind, the heir position must be given up. After all, my Marquis Manor's heir absolutely cannot be a blind person. The Marquis means to establish another heir. Do you have a candidate in mind? Since things have come to this, I won't hide it from you. I have a son outside who is brilliantly clever with the talent to become a top scholar. I intend to bring him back to the manor and have him adopted under your name. Lin Ji, pressed down by El Feilu and Dao Hong from behind, was so agitated upon hearing these words that she forgot about her pain. Ever since Gu Xian came in, Lin Ji had been trying to make noise to catch Gu Xian's attention. Unfortunately, she was destined to be disappointed. Gu Xian would never think I'd beat someone into a pig head and brazenly put her right in front of his face. Gu Xian underestimated my hatred for him. He never took me seriously, thinking I loved him to the extreme. Of course, most importantly, Gu Xian could never dream that such a delicate beauty would turn into such an ugly pig head. Lin Ji couldn't speak to reveal herself to Gu Xian, and since Gu Xian had his own plans in mind, from start to finish, he never spared a single glance at Lin Ji kneeling on the ground. I glanced at Lin Ji, who couldn't speak, and chuckled lightly. I understand what the Marquis means. There is no time like the present. Why not bring over your son from outside, and let me have a look? Gu Xian didn't expect me to be so agreeable. A look of joy flashed across his face. I'll have someone fetch her right away. Don't worry, madam. This child is very sensible and obedient, and exceptionally clever. Madam will definitely like her. Gu Xian was enthusiastically telling me all the wonderful things about his illegitimate child. He actually forgot his purpose was to save Lin Ji. Just like that, an hour passed, and hurried footsteps came from outside. Gu Xian's attendant came to report, "Marquis, the young master is not at home." How could that be? This subordinate heard that the young master came to the Marquis's residence looking for someone 2 hours ago. These words made Gu Xian's gaze turn to me. I looked at him calmly. I've also heard about this matter. Apparently 2 hours ago, a young master came to the Marquis's residence looking for his mother. Who received the person? Gu Xian pressed. My head maid Dao Hong received them. She took the person to the old madam's courtyard. As for what happened after Dao Hong, you explain the details to the Marquis. Dao Hong immediately took over. I brought the child to the old madam's courtyard to see the old madam. Unexpectedly, that child was arrogant, spoiled, and unreasonable, treating our Marquis Manor like a vegetable market, yelling and cursing in the old madam's courtyard, spewing filthy words to insult the old madam. The old madam was furious and had people break the child's limbs and cut out the tongue. I estimate there is barely a breath left now. Hearing Dao Hong finish speaking clearly, Gu Xian's face changed drastically. How is this possible? This can't be. Gu Xian naturally didn't believe it, and it was no wonder he didn't. His and Lin Ji's illegitimate child, his mother, old Madame Gu, had met before. Old Madame Gu adored the illegitimate child to the extreme, secretly visiting that child multiple times behind my back. The two got along well. So how could old Madame Gu bear to lay such a cruel hand on her own grandson? Gu Xian didn't believe it, and neither did Lin Ji. But when Gu Xian saw the mocking, icy smile at the corner of my lips, he shuddered. His face instantly turned deathly pale. I looked at the flustered Gu Xian, enunciating each word, since the child is in the old madam's courtyard. Shall we go take a look? Perhaps this girl Dao Hong saw wrong, who knows? Before I even finished speaking, Gu Xian had already rushed out impatiently. And the green willow who had been suppressing Lin Ji also released her. Lin Ji had only ruined her voice. She hadn't broken any limbs. She also followed behind Gu Xian, running outside, her anxious expression evident on her face. A cold smile appeared on my face as I called out to Liu and Dao Hong. Let's go. We'll follow along and watch the show. I brought Liu and Dao Hong following Gu Xian and Lin Ji to Mother Gu's courtyard. Gu Xian raised his hand to knock on the door, his voice trembling. Mother, Mother, open the door. The old servant woman in Mother Gu's courtyard opened the door, and seeing Gu Xian, she asked flatteringly, "What urgent matter brings the Marquis here so late at night?" Of course there was an urgent matter. Gu Xian anxiously pressed the servant woman. Where is the child? Where is that child? The child? Does the Marquise mean that rude little beast? The servant woman spoke loudly. That little beast offended the old madam and has already been punished. What? The old madam actually punished him? How is this possible? Xian seemed in disbelief and continued to press. Where is he? He, is the Marquis asking about the old madam? The old madam just finished her dinner. Xian roared. I am asking about the child. Where is that child right now? The servant woman was flustered by Xian's shouting, stammering nervously, the child. I don't know about the child either. I only know the old madam had him punished. I just heard the steward inside say the old madam was furious today and ordered that little beast's limbs broken and thrown to feed the dogs. They're probably carrying out the punishment right now. These words made Xian's eyes nearly split open with rage. His body swayed, and he shoved the old servant aside and rushed into the courtyard. He ran while raising his voice. Mother, mother. Hearing Xian's voice, the maid in Mother Gu's room lifted the curtain. The old madam is having chest pains and called for a doctor. Marquis, you've come at just the right time. Xian rushed in with a few quick steps. Mother Gu was reclining on the noble lady's couch, and her dowry nanny was massaging her chest. While massaging, she comforted. Don't be angry, old madam. Let's not be angry. Xian rushed in with a few quick steps. Mother, where is the child? You didn't touch him, did you? Mother Gu flew into a rage upon hearing this. Why wouldn't I touch him? That damned little beast had the audacity to come make trouble at my Marquis Manor, and even cursed at me in public. If I don't deal with him, where would the Marquis Manor's face be? After Mother Gu finished speaking angrily, she saw me following behind Xian and walking in. She immediately pointed at me. Madame Shu, kneel down. Kneeling, that is impossible. I feigned a surprised expression. What did I do wrong? Why is the old madam so angry? You are still pretending. Wasn't today's incident your fault? As the main mistress of the Marquise's mansion, you failed to fulfill your responsibility to discipline the servants, and actually let that ill-bred little bastard waltz right into the inner courtyard to humiliate me. What punishment do you deserve? So Mother Gu was waiting for me here. How ridiculous. Even now, she still thinks the illegitimate child of Xian and Linji was someone I brought to humiliate her. That is why she treated that child so cruelly. If she knew that child was the illegitimate son of her beloved, I wonder what expression she would have. I was in such a good mood I almost laughed out loud. Since Mother Gu wanted to argue with me, I'd first see what she was going to do. I tried my best to hold back my laughter and spoke humbly. Old madam, please let me explain. That child came to the mansion asking for you by name, claiming to have an extraordinary relationship with you. Most importantly, he even presented your dowry jade pendant as proof. After seeing the dowry jade pendant, I didn't dare neglect him, so I had Dao Hong bring him to you. How could I have known he would be so bold as to offend you? What dowry jade pendant? How come I don't know about this? Mother Gu naturally hadn't seen the so-called dowry jade pendant. How could I let Mother Gu see something so important? Today's show was already in my plans. To be honest, I've been waiting for today for a long time. I must say, this show is getting more and more entertaining. Mother Gu has long disliked me and has always been trying every way to find things to make trouble for me. Today she was cursed out by a little kid in front of so many people. There is no way she could swallow this anger. She had to find someone to vent on no matter what. And naturally I became that scapegoat. Madame Shu, you are a habitual liar. Did you arrange for someone to insult me on purpose today, using this as an excuse? Let me tell you, that little beast already confessed. Everything he did was under your orders. You've had complaints about me in the Marquise's residence, and you wanted that little beast to curse at me and anger me to death. Isn't that right? Of course not. Old madam, you've misunderstood me, I explained with a weak and pitiful look. Over there, Xian was burning with anxiety listening to me and Mother Gu bicker. Mother, where is the child now? You didn't hurt him, did you? Don't interrupt first. I am talking to Madame Shu. This is all because you spoiled her. Ever since Madame Shu married in, she has been arrogant and disrespectful to her mother-in-law. I've been tolerating her for your sake before, but she only got worse today while you weren't home. She actually brought a child from outside into the residence to curse at me. What do you think should be done about this?" This Xian was confused by Mother Gu's words. "Mother, where is the child? Tell me where the child is now dead." Mother Gu glared at her son irritably, then turned to confront me again. "Let me tell you, Shu, how dare you defy your superiors, that is, the height of unfilial behavior. The Gu family has no room for a big Buddha like you. Now, it has been proven that you disrespect your mother-in-law and scheme behind her back. You choose either have Xian give you a letter of divorce or request to leave the household yourself." Hearing Mother Gu pull this on me, Xian was also confused. He'd heard that his beloved illegitimate child was punished by Mother Gu and was burning with anxiety, but he didn't completely believe this matter in his heart. Now, seeing Mother Gu staring at me and making things difficult, Xian started having second thoughts. A mother knows her own child, she would never make things difficult for him. So her harsh words and targeting me like this must have some ulterior motive. When I heard Mother Gu asking me to choose between requesting to leave the household myself or being divorced, Xian figured it out. The child must be fine. Mother Gu was putting on this show just to target me. Xian started scheming in his head. His doting husband persona couldn't be ruined, and I was so generous and virtuous that he couldn't find a reason to divorce me. Now, it was perfect. Mother Gu had schemed up a reason for him. Disrespecting her mother-in-law, this was like having a pillow handed to you just when you are getting sleepy. What a stroke of luck! Xian immediately caught on and stopped looking for the child. He turned and glared at me, harshly interrogating. "Shu, I never imagined you could be so vicious behind the scenes. What do you have to say for yourself now?" I pitifully defended myself. It wasn't me. It really wasn't me. Mother Gu was overbearing. "If not you, then who? Xian, our Gu family has no need for such a woman who disrespects elders and knows no hierarchy. Xian, divorce her immediately." As Mother Gu made the final verdict, Xian understood her meaning and got fired up too. "Madam Shu, will you leave of your own accord? Or do you want me to give you a divorce letter? Let me remind you, if you leave willingly and spend the rest of your days in a nunnery, I can let you off easy for the sake of our 10 years as husband and wife and give you enough dignity. But if you don't know what is good for you, then the only path waiting for you is being cast out with a divorce." Oh heavens! Why is my fate so bitter? I covered my face and fake cried. My eyes kept searching outside for Feliu. When I saw Feliu appear at the doorway and make a gesture at me, I immediately burst into loud crying. When you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Is there no justice? You are bullying me too much. This is framing and slander. I won't accept it. I am going to report this to the authorities. You actually dare to report to the authorities? Who would accept your complaint? Who would dare to stand up for you, Madam Shu? Do you think this is still the time when your Shu family controlled the court? Mother Gu sneered with disdain, looking at me as if looking at an ant. I argued back loudly, unconvinced. Anyun could accept my complaint. Right under the Emperor's nose. Could your Gu family really cover the sky with one hand? My Gu family indeed cannot cover the entire sky with one hand, but covering the sky above your head is more than enough. You probably don't know that most officials in the capital came from under the left Prime Minister's tutelage. My son and the left Prime Minister are now in the same boat, with the left Prime Minister's orders. Who dares to stand up for you? Can't even His Majesty stand up for me? His Majesty can certainly stand up for you, but unfortunately you can't even see His Majesty. Let me tell you the truth. His Majesty has already been completely sidelined by the left Prime Minister. Mother Gu would say anything to threaten me. Your maternal family has fallen to this state with no possibility of restoration. You, a daughter of a convicted official, have been a marquise's wife in my Gu family for 10 years. We've already done our utmost duty. If you know what is good for you, request to leave immediately, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, Don't blame me for being ruthless. Let me tell you the truth. For my Marquis household, killing a person is easier than killing an ant. After Mother Gu's vicious threat fell, a voice suddenly took over her words. Is that so how eye-opening? I didn't know a mere Marquis household could act so lawlessly to this extent. This sudden voice made Mother Gu Xian freeze, turning their heads to look at the doorway. The servant girls and maids at the doorway had long disappeared without a trace. At some point, a person wearing bright yellow clothes had silently stood there. With just one glance at the bright yellow clothes on the person standing there, Gu Xian fell to his knees with a thud, "Your Majesty." Marquis Gu is so imposing. If I hadn't happened to pass by tonight, I wouldn't have known that I, the Emperor, have become just a figurehead. Your Majesty, please forgive me. Gu Xian kowtowed so hard it made thudding sounds. Madame Gu also rolled off the chaise lounge and knelt on the ground, trembling. I knelt down as well. Your Majesty, this humble wife has grievances to report. Speak. The Emperor was brief and to the point. Madame Gu and Gu Xian have no regard for human life today. In the manner they tortured a 7-year-old child, not only cutting out his tongue and gouging out his eyeballs, but also severing the tendons in his hands and feet and throwing him into the dog kennel in the backyard to be fed to the dogs. Such a thing happened. The Emperor called out to the guards following him, "Quickly bring that person to me." In the time it takes half an incense stick to burn, a person barely clinging to life, bitten all over and covered in blood, too gruesome to look at, was rescued from the dog kennel by the guards. Seeing the child with only half a face intact and barely a breath left, Gu Xian let out a mournful cry. Madame Gu also widened her eyes, actually forgetting that the Son of Heaven was right before her. She frantically threw herself forward, screaming, "Impossible! This can't be!" Madame Gu looked at the child before her with only half a face, so familiar to the extreme, acting as if possessed by madness. How could it be her most beloved grandson? Clearly, the face she saw during the day wasn't this one. She knew her own precious grandson best. How could she possibly treat her own precious grandson so cruelly? Not only did they cut off his tongue in public, they also gouged out his eyes. They even cruelly had his tendons in his hands and feet severed. The detestable child she saw clearly didn't have this face. He clearly spouted nonsense at her and hurled all kinds of vile words. She was so furious that she had people take action. How could this happen? Why did this happen? Mother Gu crawled over and reached out to touch the dying child. Making hoarse, gurgling sounds from her mouth, she finally fainted on the spot. I watched Mother Gu coldly, sneering repeatedly in my heart. There is too much Mother Gu doesn't know. They say every grievance has its cause and every debt has its debtor. After finding out that Gu Xian framed my maternal family, my target has always been Gu Xian. I never intended to involve other innocent people, but unfortunately the little beast that Lin Ji and Gu Xian raised is just as inhuman as Gu Xian. To make my Xiaoer a cripple so he could rightfully become the legitimate son of the Marquis Manor. That little beast actually went mad and poisoned my Xiaoer. When my Xiaoer couldn't see and was in extreme agony, Lin Ji and Gu Xian's illegitimate son was going around having fun as if nothing happened. He even boasted wildly that even if my son died, no one would dare give him trouble. An ordinary inner court woman naturally wouldn't dare give him trouble, nor would she have any power to do so. But the person he provoked is me, and I am the one even ghosts fear, a living king of hell. Since they're courting death, I'll take them all down together. I deliberately had the servants notify that little bastard about Lin Ji being detained and suffering in the Marquis's residence. When the little bastard heard that his birth mother was being tortured by me, he stormed over in a rage. He'd been spoiled rotten by Gu Xian and Lin Ji, thinking he was invincible. Unfortunately, once he entered the residence, he was caught by my maid Dao Hong and had his face swapped. The little bastard, wearing an unfamiliar face, and with his mute acupoint sealed by Dao Hong, was brought before old Madame Gu Tao Hong was a master ventriloquist. She used ventriloquism to insult old Madame Gu, exposing all the shameful secrets the old woman had hidden for decades. Old Madame Gu was so furious smoke practically came out of her ears. She thought the child kneeling before her was sent by me to humiliate her, so she inflicted the cruelest punishment on her own beloved grandson. When old Madame Gu learned the truth, she couldn't accept her own cruelty and collapsed into convulsions on the spot. Meanwhile, Xian knelt and begged for mercy, saying every nice thing he could think of to plead for the emperor's pardon. But the emperor's heart is hard to fathom back then. He gained the emperor's favor by forging documents to frame my maternal family. Now he is under suspicion for getting too close to the left chancellor. Originally, the emperor didn't quite believe the left chancellor's faction had ill intentions, but after personally overhearing the nonsense from Xian and old Madame Gu at the door, the paranoid emperor was furious beyond measure. He was utterly convinced that the left chancellor's faction would seize power and usurp the throne. How can one allow others to sleep soundly beside one's bed? Xian was secretly taken into custody that very night. The emperor began the purge of the left prime minister's faction. The Son of Heaven's wrath was like thunderbolts. The faction led by the prime minister was surrounded and apprehended by the Imperial Guard while they were still asleep. This earth-shattering roundup lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Anyone connected to the left prime minister was taken into custody for interrogation. The roundup was just the beginning. The interrogations that followed were the main event. Xian was considered by the emperor to be the ringleader among the rebels. The censors appointed by the emperor interrogated Xian through the night. At first, Xian tried to stall and resist, but as finger presses, nail boards, and various torture instruments were used one after another, even a man of iron couldn't endure it, and Xian was no man of iron, he was a despicable villain, so Xian confessed quickly. He confessed many unknown secrets, including the conspiracy with the left prime minister to frame my maternal family. The left prime minister also confessed after enduring all the tortures, and the truth of the injustice from 7 years ago came to light. My family was vindicated and restored to their former positions. Me father and elder brother submitted a memorial declining the reinstatement, sincerely expressing that they were getting old and wished to retire from service and return to farming. The emperor had made a mistake himself, so after putting on a show of trying to retain them, he rewarded them with 10,000 taels of gold and granted my father and brother's request. On the other side, Xian was sentenced to death by dismemberment. The day before the execution, I went to the prison to see Xian. He was treated extremely well by the jailers aside from his face. There wasn't a single patch of good flesh left on his body. Seeing me standing outside with my arms crossed watching him, Xian crawled over with difficulty. "It was all your design, wasn't it? It was you, wasn't it?" I chuckled lightly. "So what if it was? Can you possibly turn things around? How could you have such great ability? How could you, a housewife who never steps outside, possibly bring me down? I refuse to accept this." Xian gripped the door and glared at me hatefully. "I don't believe you did all this alone. Someone else must have helped you, right? Tell me who that person is." "Does that really matter?" I asked back indifferently. "Of course it matters. You love me so much, Xian. You love me to the bone. In these 10 years of marriage, you've obeyed my every word. Whatever I wanted, you were always the first to think of it. You treated me as your everything. How could you possibly do this?" Xian murmured. "I admit I framed your father and brother for my future prospects, but I had no choice. Xian, I've also done right by you. Back then, the left prime minister said to cut the grass and remove the roots, telling me to secretly kill you in the backyard and be done with it. I didn't listen to the left prime minister and spared your life. I never expected you would repay kindness with revenge." His words made me let out a cold laugh. "Xian, you should be grateful you didn't listen to the left prime minister and make a move on me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have lived this many more years." What do you mean?" "Literally, I am the type who always pays back every grudge. Whoever tries to kill me, I'll kill them. You are clearly not this kind of person. You must have been replaced. You are not my wife Xian. My wife Xian is gentle and virtuous. She wouldn't even dare step on an ant. You are so cruel and terrifying. You are definitely not her." Watching his crazed appearance, I chuckled softly. As long as I want, I can be Ran, or I can be the living king of hell that even ghosts fear. What? The living king of hell that even ghosts fear? You mean that early dead living king of hell from your Shu family? She didn't die. She has been alive all along, just in a different way. Xian still didn't understand. I smiled. Before you die, I'll tell you a secret. The living king of hell that even ghosts fear isn't a man, but a woman. It is me. I saw Xian's eyes widen, round and bulging, looking ridiculous and laughable. He probably never dreamed that the living king of hell that even ghosts fear was actually a woman, let alone that he had married the most terrifying living king of hell. They say the living king of hell that even ghosts fear killed without mercy. But Xian and I were husband and wife for 10 years, and I was gentle and considerate, putting him at the center of everything. He couldn't imagine that I was that existence. Everyone feared. He grabbed the door with trembling hands. So you never loved me? So marrying me was just a whimsical choice? What else does trash like you deserve my love? I looked at Xian with disdain. Marrying Xian was only a temporary measure. He had decent looks and passable literary talent. I only chose Xian after careful consideration among all the unmarried men in the capital. Although I had no feelings for Xian whatsoever, if he hadn't been so despicable and lowly, I wouldn't have been heartless either. I had once thought about living a good life with Xian, but in the first year of our marriage, he kept a mistress outside. At that time, my Shu family was at its peak, so he didn't dare make it known and secretly hid the mistress at a manor in the countryside. He thought he had done it flawlessly, but little did he know that I found out about it the very day after he got that woman. From that moment on, I had no expectations of Xian whatsoever. Men under heaven are mostly fickle. Falling for every woman they see is the norm. I figured marrying Zhongsan or Li Si would yield the same result, so I held back and did nothing. Because without love there is naturally no hate. I had no resentment about Xian taking concubines, and yet Xian actually thought I loved him so much that I would endure and yield. How full of himself was he, seeing that Xian was about to die. I told him a secret, actually. My Zhaoer isn't your child. Ever since you found that mistress outside, I've found you filthy. Being touched by you made me sick to my stomach. But I needed a child, so I went to the biggest male brothel and found a clean man. After hearing what I said, Xian's eyes were about to split open with rage. I watched his expression with amusement. He is out there working around the clock, finding mistresses, yet he expects me to stay chaste for him. That might work on other women, but how could it possibly work on me? Early the next morning, Xian was executed by dismemberment, torn into 8 pieces, his screams echoing for miles. Meanwhile, old Madame Gu and Xian's beloved mistress Lin Ji were both sent to serve as military prostitutes. With everything settled, I headed south with my little Zhaoer. As the carriage passed through Nanyang, a handsome man in white robes sat on horseback, elegantly blocking my carriage. I am Nanggong Yu, here to take my wife home. 3 repeated declarations left me utterly bewildered. Curious, I lifted the curtain to look, and when I clearly saw the man on horseback and the ceremonial procession behind him, my face went pale. Oh no, I clearly slept with a virgin male courtesan from a brothel to get his seed back then. So how did he transform into Nanggong Yu, the prince who commands 3 armies and owns half the realm?